The sun beat down hard on the calm water, making the surface of Lake Superior shimmer like a billion tiny, restless diamonds. My boat, a faithful 15-foot aluminum skiff with a 25-horsepower outboard motor, felt like the only solid thing in a world made of endless blue. I was out on a particularly remote section of the lake, a few miles from the shore of Isle Royale, a place that always felt like another world entirely. This was my office, my sanctuary, my church. My name is James, and I've been a fisherman my whole life. My dad was a fisherman, and his dad before him. It's what we do. It's in our blood, a quiet, deep-seated love for the rhythm of the water and the silence of the wilderness. Today was supposed to be a regular day, a peaceful day. The kind of day where the only sound is the gentle lapping of the waves against my boat, the quiet hum of the outboard motor in neutral, and the occasional, mournful call of a loon echoing across the vast expanse of water. The air smelled of clean water and pine, a scent I've known since I was a boy, a smell that's as much a part of me as the lines on my face. I had my coffee thermos, now half empty, a sandwich wrapped in foil, and my tackle box organized with military precision. I'd been out here since 6 in the morning, and the fish were biting, but not aggressively. I had a few respectable smallmouth bass and a couple of northern pike in the cooler. It was a good haul, not a great one, but enough to make the day feel worthwhile. I had an old radio tuned to some country music station, but I turned it down low so as not to spook the fish. It was just me and the lake. Or so I thought. The first hint that something was wrong wasn't a sound at all, but a feeling. A primal sense of unease that crawled up my spine. A feeling that the air itself had grown heavy and charged. The easy solitude of the lake suddenly invaded. I was just about to cast my line near a small, rocky outcropping that was one of my favorite spots when I heard it. A sound that was a growl, but not the growl of a bear or a wolverine. It was a low, guttural, heartbroken sound that didn't belong to any animal I knew on the lake. It was too deep, too full of raw desperation to be anything normal. I cut the engine, the sudden silence deafening, and listened intently. My heart started to pound in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the stillness. The sound came again, closer this time. It was a broken sound, a mix of fear and something much, much older. A sound of pure, unbridled terror. My mind raced, trying to put a name to the noise. I scanned the shoreline, the thick forest that came right up to the water's edge, looking for the source. Nothing. Just the endless, dark green trees. The sound seemed to be coming from the water itself. That didn't make any sense. There are no animals in Lake Superior that make a sound like that. No large mammals that would be out here in the middle of a hot summer day. I thought maybe I was imagining things. My imagination can get away from me sometimes out here in the quiet. But then I saw it. It wasn't a solid shape, but a disturbance in the water, a ripple that was too big, too deliberate to be a mere wave. It was maybe 100 yards away, bobbing in the water like some kind of strange, new kind of flotsam. At first, I thought it was a log, something torn loose by a recent storm. But then it moved, and I saw a head. 2 pointed ears, tufted and sharp, a broad, powerful snout, and a pair of eyes. Eyes that were wide with a terror so profound it chilled me to the bone. It was a lynx. A full-grown, magnificent lynx, and it was in the middle of the lake. I have seen countless wild animals in my years out here, but never a cat like this, and certainly never in the water, far from the safety of the trees. They are known to be good swimmers, but this was a completely different scenario. This was a suicide mission. My question of what it was doing out here was answered a second later when I saw the other shapes. Clinging to the mother's back were 2 small, soggy bundles of fur. Her cubs. They were barely bigger than kittens, and they were shivering uncontrollably, their little heads tucked against their mother's neck, their tiny claws digging into her thick, wet coat, the last bit of warmth they could find. The mother lynx, her magnificent face now a mask of pure exhaustion and desperation, was barely keeping her head above the surface. Her eyes, those terrifyingly beautiful amber eyes, found mine. There was no aggression in them, no predator's glare, just a plea, a desperate, raw plea for help that cut through the distance between us and hit me square in the heart. She was a mother, fighting with every last fiber of her being to save her children. She was hungry, maybe starving, and she had made a choice that only utter, life-and-death desperation could force upon a wild creature. To swim. To cross this vast, cold, unforgiving lake in search of a new home, new hunting grounds, a new chance at life. The thought of what she must have gone through, the miles she had already covered, was staggering. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. A wild lynx, in my small, aluminum boat, with her cubs. This was not a movie. This was real life. The animal could rip me to shreds without a second thought. My gut instinct screamed at me to turn the motor back on and get the hell out of there. No one would blame me. It was the sensible thing to do, the safe thing. But then I looked at the little faces, a couple of them with their eyes closed, their tiny bodies trembling with cold. I saw the mother's struggle, the way she was trying to keep her head high, the way she kept glancing at me, her only hope. The sheer, raw courage of her made me forget my fear. I couldn't leave them. The thought of just abandoning them to drown, a family fighting for their lives, was unbearable. It felt fundamentally wrong, a betrayal of everything I thought I knew about the world and my place in it. I had to do something. I had to at least try. I took a deep breath, the cold lake air filling my lungs. I made my decision. I would help them. I started my motor again, but I kept it in the lowest gear possible. I moved slowly, deliberately, trying not to spook them. I approached them from the side, trying to keep my distance but get close enough to do something. The mother lynx watched every single movement I made, her eyes never leaving mine. Her growl, which had been so full of fury moments before, was now just a soft, mournful sound. A whimper, almost. She was too tired to fight. Her body was giving out. I got within 20 feet, then 10. I cut the motor again and let the boat drift, the gentle current pushing us together. I grabbed my landing net. It was a large net, meant for big fish, with a long handle, but it was not nearly big enough for a full-grown lynx. It was all I had, though. I reached for a thick, canvas tarp I kept in the boat, unfolded it, and laid it out on the floor of the boat, a makeshift bed of sorts. I grabbed an old, thick wool blanket, too, and laid it over the tarp. I wasn't sure what I was doing or what I was going to do. I was making it up as I went along, my heart hammering against my ribs. I got closer, now only a few feet away. I could see the waterlogged fur on their bodies, the way the mother's muscles were spasming from the cold and the exhaustion. Her teeth were chattering, and her body was a roadmap of suffering. She was at the end of her rope. I reached out with the landing net, not to try and scoop them, but to offer it as a sort of makeshift ramp. I spoke to her in a low, gentle voice. It was ridiculous, I know, talking to a wild lynx in the middle of a lake. But it was all I could think of to do. "Hey there, girl. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. Just want to help." She didn't respond. She just stared at me, her head barely above the surface. Her chest rose and fell with short, frantic breaths. The little cub on her back let out a tiny, pitiful mewl. It was then that the most incredible thing happened. With a last, heart-wrenching surge of strength, the mother lynx lifted one of her paws and with a gentle shove, pushed the larger of the two cubs towards my boat. She couldn't keep going. She was done. Her motherly instinct was so powerful, so immense, that she was willing to give up her own life to save her child. She trusted me, a complete stranger, a human she must have feared her whole life, to save her baby. My hand was shaking as I reached for the cub. It was so small, so defenseless. I managed to get it onto the net and gently lift it into the boat. I wrapped it in a towel, and it started to shiver violently. I could feel its little heart beating a mile a minute. I turned my attention back to the mother. Her head had started to sink lower, and her magnificent ears were almost completely submerged. The other cub was clinging to her, whimpering. She was losing the fight. The cold water was winning. There was no more time for hesitation. No more time for planning. I moved quickly, but with a strange, almost serene calm that came from knowing there was no other choice. I grabbed the mother by the scruff of her neck, just like I would a dog, and with all my strength, I pulled. She was heavy, so incredibly heavy. Her waterlogged fur and the sheer dead weight of her exhausted body made it feel like I was pulling a stone. The water seemed to resist my every effort, pulling her back down. I don't know where I found the strength, but I did. I heaved and pulled, my back screaming in protest, and finally, with a loud gasp of air, her head was above the gunwale of the boat. I grabbed the second cub and pulled it in two. Then I focused all my energy on getting the mother into the boat. She was too weak to resist, too weak to fight. I finally managed to heave her into the boat, and she collapsed onto the canvas tarp. Her breathing was ragged and shallow, and she didn't even look at me. She just focused on her cubs. The two little bundles of fur were now huddled together, still shaking, but safe. I just sat there for a minute, my heart pounding, my body aching. My whole shirt was soaked, my arms were burning. I looked down at the three of them, and for a moment, I forgot they were wild animals. I just saw a family, clinging to each other. The mother, still panting, slowly lifted her head. She looked at her cubs, then she looked at me. Her eyes were still full of a deep sadness, but there was also something else there now. Something I didn't expect. Trust. A silent, profound trust that broke my heart. She wasn't a monster. She was just a mother. I had to get them to shore, but not to just any shore. There was no way I could just let them go on this part of the lake. They were too exhausted, too exposed. The wild lands here were unforgiving. I knew a place, a secluded cove where I had a small, private dock. I started the motor again, and this time, I didn't care about the noise. I had to get them to safety. I pointed the bow of the boat towards my cabin, a good 2 hours away. The journey was a silent, tense ordeal. The boat moved with a slow, deliberate grace, a strange arc carrying a precious cargo. The cubs had stopped shivering and were now huddled close to their mother, who was still too weak to move much. She let me, a human, sit in the same boat with her and her babies. It was a testament to her utter exhaustion and her trust. I pulled a few of the fish I had caught that morning out of the cooler and placed them on the deck, a few feet away from them. I didn't know what a lynx would eat, but I figured a starving animal would eat anything. The mother's eyes widened a little when she saw the fish, and with a low growl, she slowly reached out a paw and pulled one of the fish towards her. She tore into it, her hunger raw and powerful. Her cubs, seeing their mother eat, started to mewl again, and she nudged one of the fish towards them. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking sight. I watched them eat, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Fear, awe, and a profound sense of connection to these wild creatures. A few hours ago, I was just a fisherman. Now, I was a ferryman for a family of lynx. As we neared the small marina where I would have to stop for a moment, my mind started to race again. What was I going to tell people? What was I going to do when I got to my cabin? I couldn't just have a family of lynx living in my backyard. I needed help. I made a quick stop at a small general store on the shore. I tied my boat securely to the dock, making sure the lynx family was safe, and walked inside. The store was run by an old friend of mine, Thomas. Thomas was a kind, quiet man who knew the lake and its secrets better than anyone I knew. "Hey, James," Thomas said, looking up from his newspaper. "You're a sight for sore eyes. Haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. Catch anything good?" I stood there for a moment, unable to speak. The words seemed to get stuck in my throat. I just stared at him, and he could see something was wrong. My clothes were soaked, my hair was a mess. "James, what's wrong? Are you okay? Did you fall in? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath. "Thomas, you are not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. I'm not sure I believe it myself. I found a lynx and her 2 cubs in the middle of the lake. They were drowning. I rescued them. They're in my boat right now." Thomas just stared at me, his mouth agape. He let out a low whistle, a sound of pure disbelief. He put his newspaper down slowly, his eyes wide. "A lynx. With her cubs. In your boat," James repeated, slowly, as if trying to process the impossible. "James, you've always been a bit of a storyteller, but this is something else. This is a miracle." He came outside with me, and I pointed to my boat. He peered over the edge and saw the 3 of them huddled together, the mother watching him with those same tired, watchful eyes. He didn't say a word for a long minute. He just stared, a look of profound awe on his face. He turned around, walked back into the store, and came back out with a bag of ground beef, a few bags of ice, and a couple of large bowls. He handed them to me, a quiet smile on his face. "You're a good man, James. The lake knows. And the lake always rewards good people. You did the right thing." He paused, his eyes still on the boat. "You'll need more than that for them. I'll get you some blankets, too. Just put it on my tab. Now get them to your cabin and make sure they're safe. Call me when you can. I'll keep this place open late for you. I want to hear the rest of this story when you have time." His words filled me with a quiet strength. I thanked him, and with a renewed sense of purpose, I got back in my boat. I had a new plan. I would get them to my cabin. I would get them warm, and I would feed them. I would make sure they were safe, and then I would let them go, back into the wild where they belonged. Thomas's faith in me, and his simple act of kindness gave me the courage I needed to see this through. The last part of the journey was uneventful. The 2-hour boat ride was a quiet, almost spiritual experience. I watched the shorelines pass by, thinking about the vastness of the lake and the smallness of my boat. The lynx family was silent, a fragile piece between us. We arrived at my private dock as the sun was starting to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air was getting chilly, and I was glad to be getting them to a warmer place. I carefully tied the boat to the dock, and I approached the lynx family. The mother was more alert now, her strength slowly returning. She watched me, but she didn't growl. I knew I couldn't just let them loose in my cabin. I had a large, secure shed behind my house where I kept my wood and some tools. It was perfect. It was well ventilated, had a solid door, and was big enough for them. I grabbed some old, thick wool blankets and my sleeping bag, and I walked to the shed, making it as comfortable as I could. I came back to the boat, and I carefully picked up one of the cubs. It was no bigger than my forearm, and it let out a small mewl of protest. The mother let out a low, warning sound, but she didn't attack. She seemed to understand. I carried the cub to the shed, placed it inside on a pile of old blankets, and went back for the other one. The mother, seeing her children being taken to a place of safety, seemed to understand. She followed me, slowly, deliberately, into the shed. I placed the second cub inside, and then the mother entered, and I quickly shut the door behind her. I spent the next hour or so making the shed as comfortable as I could. I gave them one of the bowls Thomas had given me, filled with fresh water, and the other with the ground beef. I put a small space heater in the corner of the shed, making sure it was far away from the animals, and plugged it in to warm the space. I watched them through a small crack in the door. The mother ate some of the meat, and then she lay down, exhausted, the 2 cubs curled up against her warm body. They were safe. They were finally safe. I left them for the night, a sense of profound relief washing over me. I went inside my cabin, my body and mind completely exhausted, but my heart felt full in a way it hadn't in a very long time. For the next 10 days, my life became a new kind of routine. My fishing trips were put on hold. My whole world revolved around the shed. I would wake up before dawn, make myself some coffee, and then go to the shed. The first few nights, I could hear soft growls and rustling sounds from inside, but they quieted down after a few days. The smell of the shed changed, a mix of pine and wild animal musk, a scent that was both alien and strangely comforting. I would open the door just enough to put down fresh food and water, and I would watch them from a safe distance. The mother lynx's strength returned surprisingly fast. Her fur dried and became that beautiful, thick coat I'd always seen in pictures. Her wounds, some small scratches she must have gotten from her desperate swim, were healing quickly. The cubs grew more and more playful, chasing each other around the shed and pouncing on imaginary prey. The mother's fear of me was replaced by a kind of cautious acceptance. When I came to the shed, she would just look at me, a silent acknowledgement. There was no growling, no hissing. It was a fragile truce, a shared space of trust. One morning, I watched as she effortlessly leapt onto a high wooden shelf in the shed, her old power visibly returning. It was then I knew they were ready. I was amazed at how much she had recovered. She had regained her wild fierceness, the fire back in her eyes. I knew it was time. I knew they couldn't stay here forever. They were wild animals, and they belonged in the wild. I had helped them, but now I had to let them go. I felt a strange mix of sadness and pride. The thought of them leaving, disappearing into the vast forest, made me feel a little bit empty. But it was the right thing to do. The next morning, I woke up, and I knew this was the day. I went to the shed, but this time, instead of putting down food, I opened the main door all the way. The sun streamed in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The mother lynx, seeing the open door, looked at me, then at the forest beyond. She got up slowly, stretched, and then nudged her cubs with her nose. They followed her, their little bodies full of new energy. She paused at the entrance of the shed, her body a silhouette against the rising sun, and she looked back at me one last time. Her eyes, which had been so full of desperation and fear just a week and a half ago, were now clear and calm. There was a spark in them, a silent fire. It was a silent goodbye, a look that said, "Thank you." I turned and walked back to my cabin, giving them the space they needed. I watched from my window as the mother lynx led her 2 cubs into the forest, their tails disappearing among the trees, a flash of brown and gray against the green. The next day, I went back to the shed. It was empty. The blankets were a mess, and the bowls were clean, but it was just a shed again. I went back to my routine. The sun was out, the lake was calm, and I was back in my boat, casting my line. Everything was the same, but it wasn't. Something inside me had changed. The lake is still my sanctuary, but now it feels different. I am no longer just a fisherman taking from the lake. I am a part of the lake, a part of the ecosystem, and I have a new understanding of the struggles that happen just beyond the reach of my boat. A few weeks later, I was out hiking near the far side of the lake, and I saw a young deer grazing in a field. Before, I would have just noted it and moved on. This time, I paused and watched it for a long time, thinking about the simple act of survival, the constant, silent battle for life that happens all around us. The world hadn't changed, but my eyes had. Every time I go out on the lake now, I look at the shoreline a little differently. I listen to the sounds of the forest with more attention. I've been fishing for as long as I can remember, and I've seen some things. But nothing, absolutely nothing, has ever changed me the way that lynx and her cubs did. The lake is vast and cold, and the wilderness is an unforgiving place. But out there, in the middle of it all, there is a connection. A moment of shared struggle, a moment of compassion that can change everything. It's a memory I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. And every now and then, when I'm out on the lake and the sun is shining just right, I swear I can see them. A flash of fur among the trees, a memory of a journey that started with a growl and ended with a quiet goodbye. A story that reminds me, every single day, that kindness can be found in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, it's the most dangerous and desperate moments that bring out the best in us all. That we are all connected, one way or another, and a single act of kindness, no matter how small, can make all the difference.